In this video, we will be talking about the dot product. So let's say we have vector A and vector B, and we want to find the dot product for vectors A and B. So to find the dot product, we have to take the first element of vector A and the first element of vector B, and we multiply them together. So we have 2 times 4 plus the second element of vector A and the second element of vector B and multiply them together. So we have 3 times 1, which is equal to 8 plus 3, which is equal to 11. So 11 is the dot product of vectors A and B. But what does this mean? So let's say we have vector A and vector B, and then the angle between these two vectors, if the dot product is positive, like what we have here, then the angle is somewhere in between 0 degrees and 90 degrees. In our next example, we have vectors A and B, and each vector has 3 entries. So let's perform the dot product. So we have 1 times negative 2 plus 0 times 1. So we have 0 times 1 plus 2 times 1. So this is equal to minus 2 plus 0 plus 2, which is equal to 0. So now we can see that the dot product is 0. So this means that the two vectors are perpendicular to each other or orthogonal to each other. And in other words, it means that the angle in between these two vectors is 90 degrees exactly. In our next example, we have vectors A and B. So let's perform the dot product. So we have 1 times negative 2 plus 0 times 3. So 0 times 3. And this is equal to negative 2 plus 0, which is equal to negative 2. So in this result, our dot product is a negative number. So when the dot product is negative, it means that the angle in between the two vectors is in between 90 degrees and 180 degrees. In our next example, we have the vectors A and B, but we want to find the angle in between A and B. So how do we do that? Well, we have this formula, which is cosine theta equal to the dot product of A and B over the magnitude of A times the magnitude of B. And this is an important formula to know. So now let's calculate the angle. So let's calculate for theta. Well, the first step, let's calculate the dot product of A and B. So the dot product of vectors A and B is simply 3 times 4, which is 12, plus 4 times 0, which is 0. So we know the dot product is equal to 12. Now let's calculate the magnitude of A and the magnitude of B. So the magnitude of A is equal to the square root of 3 squared plus 4 squared, and this is equal to 5. The magnitude of B is equal to the square root of 4 squared plus 0 squared, and this is equal to 4. And now we could plug it into our formula. So we have cosine theta, which is equal to the dot product. So the dot product is 12 over the magnitude of A, which is 5, times the magnitude of B, which is 4. And this gives us 12 over 20. So let me just write cosine theta here. So 12 over 20 simplifies to 3 over 5. And if we want to isolate for theta, we can use the cosine inverse. So the cosine inverse of 3 over 5. If you punch this into a calculator, it would give us 53.13 degrees. So theta would be 53.13 degrees. So the angle in between vectors A and B is 53.13 degrees.